Hello, everybody. Lovely to see everyone here. I'm reading names in the chat box that I know. So lovely to see people that I know in the chat box. Having you in the room is fantastic. And I've been reading that we've got people from many different places in the world, people from Thailand, from Portugal, from Greece, from Ghana, from Colombia. I'm going to be in Colombia at the end of May, so that's fun. Slovakia, Georgia, Brazil, Armenia. So we've got a nice mix, and you will all be able to chip in with details about your cultures. So that's fantastic. I'm in Argentina, but when people ask me, where are you from? I haven't really got a straightforward answer. I was born in Spain, but I don't really relate to my country of birth. I was only there until I was 4. I am British, brought up by British parents, both of them. And I live in Buenos Aires in Argentina. So a bit of a mix. And there are bits of British and bits of Argentine that I do connect with. Is there anyone else here in the room who feels a little multicultural in one way or another? Bits and bobs from different places. Your heart is in Indonesia, Will. Lovely. Okay, and now I've got a window. So to begin this session, I'm just going to look out the window and reach out to see what I can find. And I can see Mauricio is Colombia and USA. Lovely. Nina, born in Australia. Mum is Spanish and Dad is Swiss. Wow, fantastic. I'm going to put my hand out this window. I'm going to reach and see what I can find. Ha! A story from Nigeria. Does anyone know why the sun and the moon live in the sky and not down here on Earth? Because you know what? I heard that the sun and the moon and the water were best friends once, and they used to live together on Earth, on land. This African tale is called While the Sun and the Moon Live in the Sky. Many years ago, sun, moon, and water lived together on Earth, and they were really good friends. Sun visited water often, but water never returned the visits. One day, water said to sun, your house isn't big enough. It's too small for me and my friends to visit. How many friends do you have? Asked sun. I have a lot of friends, said the water. Seas, rivers, oceans, lakes, fish, and other water animals. Sun went home and had a talk with moon. Let's build a bigger house so water can visit us. So they built an enormous house with a tall, wide door. Welcome, said sun when water arrived. Is there room for me? Yes, said sun. Welcome, please come in. So water went in through the tall, wide door. Soon, water was filling the house. It was flowing and flowing and flowing in. I have a lot of friends with me, said water. Is there enough room for them too? Yes, said moon. Come in. Our house is enormous. The more, the merrier. So more water came flowing in, and the clownfish swam in, and the pufferfish, and the swordfish, and the seahorse, and the shark, and rays and whales, and on and on and on, kept coming in through the tall, wide door. Suddenly, there was too much water in the house. There wasn't enough room for sun and moon. So they climbed up to the roof. When the water flowed over the top of the roof, sun and moon were forced to go up into the sky. And there they made their new home. oh, look, they're still there. So that's why the sun and the moon are in the sky today and have been there ever since. I took that story out from the window. A window is something you can see the world through. A window can transport you to different places and allow you to escape and see the world in a different way. But mirrors allow us to see ourselves. They reflect our image. They give us a glimpse of our roots and help to build an understanding about ourselves. We can use mirrors and windows in our lessons to raise intercultural awareness. As mirrors, lessons can reflect learners' own culture, help build their identity, a sense of belonging. And as windows, our lessons can offer learners a view into someone else's experience, help learners understand the wider world, experience another culture, or the life of a person who may be different from theirs. Children cannot truly learn about themselves until they learn about others as well. They need experiences that reflect their own lives and the lives of others. So what we're going to do today is, first of all, discuss what is culture. What culture do we teach in the classroom? Whose culture? What does it mean to teach culture? We're going to look at the concepts behind big C culture and small c culture, and then into the practical part. We'll start with traditional children's culture like stories, songs, games. Then we'll go into culture themes, and finally, general cultural ideas where everything can be put together. So now, everyone has a cultural background. We are all cultural beings, but it can be quite difficult to define culture because the concept is very broad. So what comes to mind when you think about culture? What is culture for you? Could you brainstorm just some words, some ideas that come to mind when you think of the word culture? You think of mother tongue, traditions. You try to encourage your students with this excellence: identity, customs, norms, history, stories, heritage, way of life, behavior, music, food and places, way of living, environment, art, rituals, songs, beliefs and ways of life, language, social behavior. Absolutely. All people are members of at least one culture, and whether or not we realize it, the culture we belong to affects how we think, how we interact, how we communicate with others, how we transmit knowledge. When people think of culture, we often think of things like food, clothes, music, art, artifacts, dances, literature. Others may associate it with other type of conventions like social interaction patterns. Respect, says Maria, values, ideas, attitudes. So culture can be separated into two general categories. We've got the big C culture and the little c culture. Big C refers to the culture that is most visible. It's big culture, it's most visible. They're the overt forms of culture. The small c culture, in contrast, is the more invisible type of culture. Now, could you tell me in the chat box, which do you think from this list on the screen, or those words you can see, which are the more invisible elements of culture? The more invisible elements of culture on the screen. Which do you think are the small c culture? Those that are more invisible. Perspectives, feelings, verbal and non-verbal language. Good. Yes, feelings, perspectives, absolutely, values and beliefs. Yes, there you go. So what Edward Hall proposed was an iceberg metaphor to talk about culture. It highlights that a lot of cultural elements are not easily visible, those that are at the bottom. And he suggested that hidden culture takes up about 90% of culture. Those values, those beliefs, those patterns of interactions, how to behave, attitudes. And only about 10% of culture is easily visible. The big C, music, food. What we usually teach in classrooms is only the tip of the iceberg, but it's a good place to start. So coming to the language classroom, when it comes to teaching culture, whose culture should it be? In the chat box, do you usually include activities to discover, explore, and learn about British or American culture, whichever it is that you tend to teach in your context? Different English-speaking cultures? What about Australia, New Zealand? Students' own culture? Or any culture? What do you tend to teach in your classroom? Many C's, many D's, some A's, all of them. Good. Contrast between cultures. Any culture including the students' culture. Lots of D's, lots of C's. Lovely. That's great. So I asked this question because there have been changes in what we understand as teaching culture. This goes from the foreign cultural approach, which focuses on the culture of the country where the language is spoken only, and does not deal with learners' own culture or with relations between other cultures. It would be only the culture of an English-speaking country, whichever it is that you teach. And this has transformed towards an intercultural approach, which is based on the concept of culture that takes into consideration that different cultures are related to each other. This approach also deals with the learner's own country and relations between other cultures, not only that one that you're teaching in the classroom. We're looking out the window, but also looking in the mirror. So it brings us to the question of why this matters. One of the reasons is for children not to be culture blind. Doesn't everyone dress the same as I do? Doesn't everyone eat the same food? Doesn't everyone have the same social norms? Cultural blindness is the inability to understand how things can be done, viewed, or lived differently by people because of one's own rigid viewpoints. And what we have to be careful about is stereotypes as well. When I was searching for a photograph of Argentina for that first slide, I had to decide whether to choose the image of a gaucho with his mate in the campo. That's something like a horseman cowboy type drinking mate that we drink in Argentina at the countryside. That is Argentine tradition, yes, but that doesn't represent the way I live. And I was talking about where I come from and where I live. So that doesn't really represent me in Argentina. So I put the photograph of the city of Buenos Aires with the obelisk and the buildings with its busy nightlife. It's the danger of a single story, isn't it? And if you have not seen it, you can jump into YouTube straight after the session to watch that excellent talk about the danger of a single story. We're learning about other cultures, and it's a great way to teach children to appreciate the diversity of the world and the diversity within a given culture as well. It is also all about our differences that make us most interesting. How boring it would be if we were all the same. It's part of understanding that there are not just two cultures in the world, mine and others, or me and them, but many, many cultures around the world that are all interesting and exciting to learn about. We promote positive attitudes towards the concept of culture, fostering their own sense of self-identity, but also taking an interest in other people. So it develops empathy, and someone is saying acceptance. It's seeing the world through another's eyes. It's the window that fosters respect, kindness, empathy, tolerance, open-mindedness. And this in turn shapes global citizens who will most probably be using English to communicate with people all around the world, not only people in English-speaking countries. Learning English means learning a language for life as responsible global citizens in a world that is more and more connected. So to operate with other people, you need to use this lingua franca, which you will use with cultural respect. You need to understand other cultures. Educating children about other cultures is another way of fighting racism, prejudice. The more diversity children are exposed to from a very young age, the better it is to promote world tolerance, peace, and understanding, and every little bit helps. See how this is much more than just a body of knowledge, knowing about cultures because you have read about it or you have read what people do in other cultures. You can know about other cultures, yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean you respect them. These are skills, these are abilities that begin with promoting positive attitudes from a very young age. And there are lots of opportunities for including some lovely new language at the same time. So let's go into the practical part. For me, the starting point is traditional children's culture. You get them when they're very young, and children from different cultures enjoy similar activities. In the chat box, what do children around the world enjoy doing? What do children enjoy in general? Singing, playing, dancing, games. That's right. And we can find these in all cultures in one form or another. Songs, rhymes, games, and stories can encourage children to join in activities that may be familiar to what they do in their language. Go with what is familiar to them first, rather than learning only about a different culture, because you need to ensure that culture is represented in a way that is concrete, that is accessible, tangible, appealing, that they can relate to. We want it to be motivational. We want to encourage a willingness to participate in cultural activities first. So from a very young age, use things like children's songs and rhymes. It's a great place to start. If I look out the window from my context in a school in Argentina, where L1 is Spanish, the student's language is Spanish, I can see songs in other languages, not only English, but perhaps other languages as well. Let's go with this one. Ram san san, ram san san, guli 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 guli, ram san san, ram san san, ram san san, guli 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 guli, ram san san, Arabic, Arabic, guli 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 guli, ram san san, Arabic, Arabic, guli 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 guli, ram san san. This is a Moroccan song. I understand guli guli means tell me, and Rafik means friend, and the rest is nonsense words. That's what I understand. If there's anyone out there who can confirm this, go ahead. It's a great warm-up to energize in a classroom. You can start slow, then try getting faster and faster with the movements and with the song. You can confirm. Thank you very much. Excellent. So these types of songs can come into the classroom. It doesn't have to be English, doesn't have to be the language that you're using in the classroom. Bring out other cultures as well. Bring out other languages as well. Don't forget to look in the mirror, though. Don't forget the context of your children's culture. So if I look into the mirror here, I see songs and rhymes in the children's own language as well. I see Insi winsi araña trepó a la canaleta, vino la lluvia y se la llevó. That's Insi winsi spider in Spanish. And there are other examples on the screen. In my context, this is a song that children know in their own language as well. This is part of the children's culture. So we ask learners, do you have a song like this in your country? Can you teach me your version of it? I'll teach you another, but can you teach me yours? Are they exactly the same? Are they different? It serves to help children develop a sense of their own identity, as well as recognize universal characteristics that we all share as well. And if children can relate to a song because they know the tune of it already, they can quickly pick up the new lyrics in a different language with its own sound, its own rhythm, its own stress patterns much easier. Can you think of any songs or rhymes in English that are also sung in the country you live in that country's language? Can you think of any of those songs? Maybe that's something you could have a think about. Happy birthday to you. Wheels on the bus. Good. Okay, so there's lots of those traditional songs that children will recognize in their own language. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Fantastic. And it will change depending on where you live. Okay. Baba, black sheep, twinkle, twinkle, little star. Fantastic. Okay, exposing children to stories originally from different places raises children's awareness that All countries have a wealth of well-known traditional stories, and they might even have heard these stories from far, far away. That means we're actually closer than we think. Sometimes the same stories are told in different parts of the world with slight variations. So looking into the mirror from where I live, I can see Little Red Riding Hood, which would also be familiar in the children's mother tongue, but it's originally European. Here, children can identify the repetitive refrains in the story, like, "What big eyes you've got," and quickly grasp the new sounds because they already know it in their own language. And out of the window, we can raise cultural awareness of other cultures through Anansi stories from Ghana, which often teaches lessons about the consequences of making bad choices. And I'm sure there are other stories in your culture that are about the consequences of making bad choices. There usually are. Many of these stories share common themes, don't they? Can your learners learn some of these short tales, maybe 2 or 3 of these, and retell them or write their own little short stories? Good. Aidan says the new generation is not familiar with traditional stories. Unfortunately, that's right. Another good reason to bring them into the classroom, because they have their morals and their lessons, and we can bring in a lot of cultural elements to the classroom with traditional stories as well. So that's great. So a picture book that I really love is Handa's Surprise. By just looking at the cover, you can discover lots about the story. Where do you think Handa lives? How do you know? How does it look different to where we live? How does it look similar? Handa's Surprise is set in Africa, and some aspects of our lives here in Argentina differ from Handa's very much. The illustrations are key. What is Handa wearing? Why is she carrying a basket on her head? Have you ever seen these animals in our country? Which fruit have you tried? Maybe we can blindfold children and have them taste some of these fruits that are not that common if we can get them in our country. Ask if a boy or a girl from our country was the main character, what would he or she look like? What would he or she be wearing or doing? Or how would they appear in the story? Learn about Handa's country and culture. Talk about which songs, stories, games Handa might sing, read and play in her country. Compare illustrations from the picture books to real photographs as well. Exercises like these allow children to experience something with an open mind, start becoming aware of the different elements that compose culture. Some are different, some are similar. And display these picture books that you use in the classroom. The books you read are available to children and should represent the culture, but also diverse characters and settings. So again, think about the mirror and the window. I told you a story at the beginning about why the sun and the moon live in the sky. What activities could you do as a follow-up to that tale that relate to your culture? So, of course, you can always do a true and false exercise after a story, or you could do a sequencing exercise that's related to the story itself. See if students understood the story, if they can sequence it, if they can put it in order, if they could do a true and false, what they comprehend. But think with your culture hat on. What activities could you do thinking about culture related to this story? Remember the story? Good. Fantastic. Role play. Ask and ask questions. Freeze frame. Story sequencing. Lovely. How about talking about what they think Sun and Moon's house was like? Do you think it's a skyscraper? What came into your mind when I told you the story? What kind of house was it? Yeah. Do you know any other stories about the sun and the moon? Do you know any other folk tales from your culture? Yeah. Put students into pairs and they can read other folk tales related to that. Make up your own story, Maria. Yes. Dramatizing. Fantastic. Discuss the purpose of folk tales, perhaps. People told folk tales to explain our world before we knew the science behind it. So what does this folktale explain about our world and about nature? What lessons does it teach? It has been traditionally passed down through storytelling. You could change the main characters and retell it, absolutely. Maybe put it in a different context, in a different setting. This is an example from Share It, which embeds culture into literary genres like non-fiction, poetry, story fiction, plays. So culture is embedded into those genres, which is fantastic. And these are lovely share the world culture-based lessons. This is taken from Share It, Macmillan's course for primary. So going back to traditional games, what games do children play in your country? Let me know. What games do children play in your countries? What are those traditional games you played when you were a child, perhaps? Tag, hide and seek, football, hopscotch, yeah, leapfrog, fantastic. Games are common to all cultures in the world in one way or another. The types of games that are played in different regions, of course, vary. Children can be encouraged to reflect on similar games they play in their cultures to celebrate the similarities, also the differences between what children do around the world. Children are interested in what other children are interested in as well, and they're interested in knowing what other children do. It's the mirror and the window. Find someone who, Simon Says, 7 stones. So plan to play different types of games, even from different cultures. For example, you could play an Australian game that's called Stuck in the Mud or Stick in the Mud originally, where you choose a child to be it. It's like tag, but the child needs to tag as many other children as they can. And when they do, they shout out, "Stuck in the mud." And that child cannot move and must stand with their legs and arms apart. The only way to be freed is for a non-tagged child to crawl through their legs. Okay, the game ends when all players have been tagged and they're all stuck in the mud. So they need to shout that out. Do you know if that game exists in your country? You call it freezing game. Good. In Argentina, sometimes we call it mancha puente. Mancha puente. Puente means bridge, because that's how you're standing, like a bridge, and someone has to go under the bridge to sort of save you. We're far away from Australia, but then we can relate. And I'm teaching lots of action verbs too. Run, touch, stand, crawl, tag, don't move, legs and arms apart, and the phrase stuck in the mud. So there's lots of language in there as well. Or catching stars, that's from Africa. You have 2 groups, you have stars and catchers. Catchers stand in the middle and stars stand at one end. Catchers say, "Starlight, star bright, how many stars are out tonight?" Does that remind you of anything? A nursery rhyme in English? Starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish I may, I wish I might. Have this wish I wish tonight. It's not used in the same context, but not as a game, but as a way of wishing on a star. So we're finding connections again. But anyway, in this game, catchers say, "Starlight, star bright, how many stars are out tonight?" Stars say, "More than you can catch." And the stars run across to the other end and try not to get caught. Help your learners realize how this is similar to, "Please, Mr. Crocodile, may you cross the river?" Perhaps. Or El Pulpo in Spanish-speaking countries. Find those connections as well as those differences. Playing games from different cultures allows us to see those games, although they may vary, and that there's a commonality between cultures. We can ask them to explain their game as well, and then play it. They play it in their own language, play it in English as well. See if it works if we translate it. What happens if we translate it? What's the word for El Bulbo? It's an octopus, okay? And that will make sense. That's meaningful because that's a game they like to play. They might suggest piedra, papel, o tijera. Yes, I know that one. It's rock, paper, scissors. So those are the words for piedra, papel, o tijera in their own language. Rock, paper, scissors. Let's play. Maybe once in Spanish. Let them teach you. And now in English. Look at these lovely photographs capturing children at play in different countries in the world. How are these similar or different to how you play in your country? What is different? What is similar? Why do you think they're playing those games in those countries? Does the weather have anything to do with it? What about the landscape? You can make a photo collage like this digitally or on a poster board. Also use real photos of people doing everyday tasks for children to make connections that others are more like us than we think sometimes, not just highlighting the differences. Do a see, think, wonder activity for inquiry, for example. They can describe the photo, what they see, say what they think about the photo, and what they wonder about. Get them curious about culture. Lots of reflection. Then there are toys. Maybe a child in Turkey will appreciate a different type of toy from a child in Brazil. Do you like these toys? Would you play with these? Do you play with these? Do you have one? Can you bring it to class to show us? Earlier on, we mentioned different topics that come to mind when we think of culture, the big C, the small c. And you have mentioned some of the cultural themes or culture elements that you can work on in the classroom. Using these themes give children time to reflect and discuss the existence of other ways of doing things, where it's not right or wrong, it's simply different. Third, when Will asked you at the beginning what you like doing or what you like, many of you mentioned food. Food is at the center of many cultures, and some children may be afraid of new experiences and of trying new food, sometimes because it's seen as alien, something so different. I'll probably not like that. I'm not going to try it. Ask your class families if there are any favorite dishes that they'd like to share with the class. And you can actually cook it or ask them to cook it and bring it. Talk about the ingredients. Lots of new language there. Try the ingredients separately to see if children can identify those ingredients in the dish when they try it. Like Mexican guacamole. Try avocado first by itself. Try onion by itself. Try tomato. Try cilantro. And then you put it all together and say what ingredient you can taste the most. Lots of language practice as well as culture practice. Some cultures also have a different way of eating, such as with their hands or using chopsticks, which can be really interesting to learn about and even try. Yes, do your parents cook? What do they cook? And discuss that in pairs. That's a great activity to do, Abdullah. It's excellent. Other interesting questions could be, who cooks in your house, or do your parents cook? Yes. What time do you have dinner? What do you drink with your meals? Because in some contexts, people drink lunch, have lunch with a cup of tea. Some cultures, it's common practice to drink tea after lunch, or in others, it's coffee after lunch, for example. Or where do you eat in your house? Do you have a living room? Do you eat in your living room? Do you eat in the dining room? In the kitchen? Yeah. So in this Share the World lesson from Share It, there's a little poem about different snacks. So you can discuss what snacks do you like. Do you like ice cream? What's your favorite snack? Where do you eat it? Or maybe you always have that kind of snack in your grandma's house. You don't have it at home, but at your grandma's house you do. Or maybe only if you go out to a restaurant for dinner. I remember going to Mexico and finding that most snacks in a packet were spicy. And I'm sure there are other cultures where this happens as well. But children are used to eating spicy things in Mexico, aren't they? Not here. Most adults don't even eat spicy things here. It's not in the culture. Post a culture snack, if you like. Show your learners pictures of different types of snacks. Pain au chocolat from France. Coxinha from Brazil. I'm sorry about pronouncing those wrong. Churros, Spanish churros, Argentine alfajores. Ask your learners which they have tried and what snacks they eat. Make a map with your class that shows typical snacks around the world. Bring some of these snacks for children to try, if you can get them in your country. Find a recipe. Try cooking some if it's easy to cook in the classroom. We have croissants in Argentina, which are obviously originally French. It's far away from Argentina, but closer in some ways. Getting hungry now. Plan a project on hats from around the world, or shoes, or outfits, What are the differences? Why do people wear hats like these or shoes or no shoes? Has it got to do with the weather, hard flooring, type of jobs? Use lots of descriptive language, colors, size, shapes, materials, fabric. Search for photographs, make a photo collage, add children's drawings, or bring real shoes or hats or outfits if you have them, if you can get hold of any, because showing symbols or objects of a culture is often an effective way to engage interest when they can see the real thing. That's great as well. But don't let this result in narrow stereotyping again, okay? Not all Mexicans walk around all day with a Mexican sombrero, okay? Nor do all British men wear a bowler hat, okay? Children are interested in learning more about kids their own age, including what schools look like in other countries or how they go to school. You can connect with schools in different countries and have a few Zoom sessions in English as a common language. They can show how they greet in their country, what language they speak, how do they go to school, what do they eat for lunch, do they have a uniform, what activities do they do at school, what activities do they do after school. You can have a lovely chat in English with a school in a different culture and learn about them firsthand almost. Homes. Ask children to draw their house from the outside, from the inside, describe it, talk about the parts of the house because it's not the same in every place in the world. Their furniture. How many rooms do you have? Does everyone around the world have the same house layout as your house? Do you eat in the kitchen, in the living room, maybe in the bedroom? If you have a multicultural classroom, this is fantastic because you will have lots of different types of houses. Music and dance. Listen to traditional music. Talk about the different instruments you can hear. Bagpipes, that's something very different to the instruments we have in Argentina. We don't have bagpipes. Accordions. Have you got any of these instruments? Can you bring it tomorrow? Lots of musical language, styles of music, rap, tango. Use these rhythms to compose a new song, write your own song, or make instruments to accompany the music. What do people sing about? Is there a history behind the music? Compose a song to a tango tune or a rap. Learn a dance, Irish step dancing, Scottish dancing, the tarantella. Make diverse art as a way of introducing students to other cultures through hands-on creative activities. So you don't just read about it as if it was something alien. Let them experience it to bring it closer. Make Chinese lanterns, African necklaces, Mexican tissue paper flowers or skulls, Japanese origami, which is great for understanding instructions. Fold it that way or whatever. Celebrations. All this can be used when celebrating festivals to get children excited about diversity. You could host a monthly cultural party that children will look forward to. Dia de los Muertos or Chinese New Year. Research all the above. Food, clothes. Use books, music related to the celebration of the culture. Show and do some sort of art to celebrate the party. Ask them, how is it similar or different from your celebrations? Do you celebrate any of these? In Argentina, we celebrate Halloween, even if it's not an Argentine festivity. Yes, water festival, absolutely. So you could have a celebration a month that children will be excited about. So this example from Share It is planning a weekend in. So you can sum up all of this by planning pretend weekends to different cities. Where shall we go first? Where would you like to go? Where is it on a map? Okay, how can we get there from where we are? What do people do on weekends? Are there any parks, theme parks, shopping malls, markets? Shall we go on any excursions? What can we do there? What food would we try while we're there? What language will we need to learn to go to this city? Which city shall we visit next? So you visit another city and you mark your travels on a world map. And so you ask them what city they would like to visit. So it comes from their interest as well. Good. Ya says, in each provinces in Indonesia, we have additional subjects to study about our cultures based on our regions. And sometimes we study other cultures from another province or tribes in our country. That's excellent. That's amazing because within a culture, there are many different cultures as well, aren't there? There are very different ways of living within one same culture as well. So that's fantastic. Thanks for that. Lovely. So you can look at these pictures, think what you can do at the weekend, see if you can perhaps find a virtual field trip to Tokyo to learn more about it and see what it's like. And then once the concept of culture is in place, have children become creative. Maybe they can work together to make an amazing new city with its own culture. What is our city like? Maybe it's near the beach. Maybe it has lots of stores. What could you do at the weekend there? What fun things can you do? What can you eat there? You give your city a name. What is the language? Maybe it's a made-up language. What food can we eat? Maybe it's something totally different that doesn't exist. Write a traditional story or a folk tale for your city. Create some typical music for it. What are the houses like? What are the values? What is important? Friendship, elderly people, recycling. It's a nice way to round up the whole idea of what culture is by creating your own invented culture. So these samples that I showed you today are from Share It. And so I thought it would be a good occasion to mention our new Facebook community group that I'm leading for Share It teachers around the world. Whether you're already a Share It teacher or you're a user to be, you can join by scanning the QR code on the screen with your phone. What you'll get is a lot of teacher tips, weekly posts, live videos, quizzes, ideas. We're going to work with pronunciation, communication, values, how to set up activities or do group work. And we welcome lots of sharing and exchanging of ideas like you did today in the chat box. Lots of questions, writing about your own experiences as well. So we hope to get lots of teachers joining our community. Have you scanned it? I hope you have. So talking about sharing, would you like to share with us one thing that you would like to try out in your lesson? To look into the mirror or through the window or both. What are you taking away with you today? I'd love to read your comments. Everything, says Eleni. Thank you, Eleni. What would you take away with you today to teach about the mirror and the window? Good. The mirror. Both. Okay. Will you start with traditional children's culture? Will you do a nice big project including lots of cultural elements? What is it that you will take away from today? Okay, good. Then you do both traditional festivals. Good project. Tips to raise awareness. Show them different games from around the world. Dana, that's excellent. Follow-up activities like discussions in pairs. How differences can enrich. Fantastic. Songs, good. Try to cooperate. Some of the games, traditional games, yeah. Excellent. To learn about the great variety of the world, follow-up activities, more songs and chants, posters and mini-books. That's nice, Macmillan. Music in other languages, ethnic food, games and food, songs, collage, and really excellent. Songs and games, lovely. The culture, the big C culture and the small C culture, Maya. Feelings, traditions and games, lovely. Okay, and just before we go, I've got one last little story to share with you because stories are fantastic for bringing culture into the classroom. And this one is called Whoever You Are. Little one, whoever you are, wherever you are, there are little ones just like you all over the world. Their skin may be different from yours, and their homes may be different from yours. Their schools may be different from yours, and their lands may be different from yours. Their lives may be different from yours, and their words may be very different from yours. But inside, their hearts are just like yours, whoever they are, wherever they are, all over the world. Their smiles are like yours, and they laugh just like you. Their hurts are like yours, and they cry like you too, whoever they are, wherever they are, all over the world. little one, when you are older and when you are grown, you may be different and they may be different wherever you are, wherever they are in this big, wide world. But remember this, joys are the same and love is the same. Pain is the same and blood is the same. Smiles are the same and hearts are just the same wherever you are, wherever you are, wherever we are, all over the world. Thank you all for your attention, your wonderful participation, and I hope this will be a great opportunity for you to embrace culture and look into the mirror, also the windows, for a lifetime of curiosity, respect, appreciation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. That was so enlightening, really heartwarming as well. Really nice to see. It was just great. It's kind of also a bit of a trip around the world just to see all these other cultures and what teachers, what students can benefit from by exploring other cultures, and comparing cultures is so interesting, isn't it? Also through a child's eyes, comparing cultures is just so fascinating, the way that they perceive what another culture is doing or what they like. And,
Absolutely, because children can have a very narrow vision if we don't bring them closer to this awareness that not everybody is exactly the same as you think. Your life is one, but there are billions and billions and millions and billions of lives all over the world that do different things. And some things are similar, some things are different.
Yeah, it's also, obviously the similarities are also really interesting. One country, the other side of the world, are doing same things in a different language, in a slightly different way. It's so interesting, isn't it, how cultures are sort of clashing across, miles and miles. We have got some questions. I wanted to ask you a quick question myself there. So you've got a really interesting sort of background about where you've lived, where you come from, where you identify as, and where you live now. Can I ask what is you're really good at this, and I just wanted to know what impact has your sort of worldly background had on your ability to do this? Do you think that's been important?
Yes. Yes, I do. I think, you can be very open-minded, can't you? Because you experience firsthand how people live differently and what's important, and all those small C culture elements come into play much more when you actually live it. The perspectives, the values, the attitudes, that all comes into play as well. So I think that it has a very big impact on how you think and how you think differently at times, because at times you're thinking more towards what one culture would think like, and at other times you think, oh no, but perhaps it's a different, you could think of it with a different perspective, couldn't you? And I keep thinking like, I can see both sides of the coin many times, at least with those cultures that I do relate to. But of course, if you had any other cultures involved in your life, you would think of things differently as well, or perhaps from many different other perspectives. But yes, I think it is really important to open children's minds from a very young age. And that's how I was brought up as well. Living in Spain for the first few years of my life, then living in Argentina, and growing up with British parents. It all influenced a lot about how I feel like education should work in terms of including cultural elements in classrooms.
Yeah, I think also, you may not know exactly what a culture you haven't experienced in depth, how they would behave in a certain scenario, what they might say or what they would do, but perhaps having multiple cultures in your sort of experience, in the things that you've studied or done in your daily life, it at least gives you the idea of the breadth of cultures in the world, that it can be wildly different and wildly similar. Anyway. So
absolutely.
I've completely monopolized the Q&A with my own questions, so I'm going to go to the Q&A. We have got loads of questions here for you. Really interesting ones. Thank you firstly to Aidan and Azaz. I definitely pronounced that wrong, but I just wanted to say thank you. You've got some really interesting questions here. I'm going to put one of them to you, Sarah. And
okay.
So Aidan's talking about actually getting these concepts across, really getting them across, because they've made a really good point that you can show them a picture of porridge or a picture of a pretzel. But you can't feed them and show them porridge to experience it. What's the texture like? What does it taste like? You can talk about history of it and all the other things that you mentioned. But do you have any other suggestions about how to really get across maybe quite an alien concept for Tilbury pursuits?
Okay, so that's interesting. I'll take the porridge example. In Argentina, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, where we have porridge in the story, that is translated as soup because there is no porridge in Argentina. So it has been translated as soup. The traditional story here is soup, not porridge, because it's been translated like that. So yes, sometimes when things are translated, stories, poems are translated, or songs, they can get a bit lost in translation, and the concepts might not be exactly the same. However, I think it is still important to bring these elements as close as possible. So the story itself is a good one to use. Yes, let's use Goldilocks and the Three Bears, even though there is a change of a word because it doesn't exist in that country. But also, I would, at primary level, not before that, not pre-primary perhaps, but in primary level, I would say, oh, look, and in the English version, it says this, and in the Spanish version, it says that. Look at the differences within the story or the poem. See how that translation has changed it, and say, okay, we know what soup is in Argentina. We don't know what porridge is, so should we find out? So then try and find out, get as close as possible to what porridge is when you possibly can. Photographs, if you can bring something that feels a bit like porridge. Okay, this is what it sort of feels like.
I was thinking lentil soup. Is lentil soup? Maybe the texture is a bit different. I don't know.
Okay, something like that. But at least say, okay, it's something like lentil soup. Yeah, bring it as close as you possibly can. But also compare that. Look, here there is a difference in these words in this song or this story, because it does happen a lot as well. That's a great question, Ivan. Thank you.
Yeah, no, great question. So Carol has asked, can a teacher encourage? I'm sure I understand the question. I just want to read it one more time. So, can a teacher encourage stereotypes, but again, use it as a platform to teach and learn other cultures? So, I suppose if you look at a culture from a certain distance, you're going to have to start getting a bit stereotypical.
Probably yes, but you want to be careful with it. So yes, you will probably say, people in Mexico wear sombreros and eat guacamole. Probably you will, yes, at some point. But then at some point, you want to say, oh, look at this photograph. Is this man wearing a sombrero and eating guacamole? No, he's not. He doesn't do that all day long. So we don't need to think of a Mexican person in that outfit eating that food necessarily, because what else does he eat? Oh, he also eats this and this and this and this. And does he eat anything that is similar to what we eat in our country? Probably there is something similar. Probably you'll find similarities. So find that similarity as well. So let's not go into this. You will probably have some stereotypical elements, yes, but always try and move out of there and realize that you're being stereotypical and say, okay, no, it's not necessarily basic like that. It's not as basic as that, is it? So let's bring in a photograph or a song or a story that shows something more about that culture. I think that's the way to do it. Bring in variety.
Well, hopefully it's going. I mean, the world is moving in a way where people can communicate across borders a lot easier. And I'm sure that's going to get, in the next couple of decades, a lot more easy for young learners to be, I don't know about young learners, but learners certainly to communicate and actually ask these questions and actually delve into cultures and find out whether everyone in Italy eats macaroni, for example. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, that's not and once you plant that seed of curiosity, then that's fantastic, because then they'll start asking the questions. But do Italians do that? Well, they'll start being curious and they'll start to want to know. But you want to plant that seed first. Otherwise, they're very much within their own culture, and there's no necessity to think about any other culture, is there? If there isn't something there's not a stimulus that engages them and makes them want to become interested in it.
Absolutely. Okay, so one more question. Is that all right? One more? We'll call it that.
Sure.
Another classic from Aidan. So talking about translation of stories, our stories, or the story, they're asking about the stories that you referred to. Some of them, I'm guessing, were originally written in English, some in other languages, and some cultural concepts might get lost in translation. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. The first story I told you about, the sun and the moon, that's an African story. The one at the end, that was Men Fox, that's written in English. The song Ram Sam Sam, that's Moroccan, but I kept it in that same language. So yes, some you can use in their own language. Ram Sam Sam can be used in that language. You would use it as a warm-up, as an energizer, but then you could look into the culture as well. And some of them will be translated, yes, because you want to bring culture close to your students. So you wouldn't be telling the story in a different language, perhaps. You would have to tell it in English. But if it's a story that your students know in their own language, bring that into the classroom as well. Let them teach you that story as well. And again, notice the differences or notice the similarities. Come back to the porridge. If it's the same or different in one language or another, it's okay to include other languages. If you know the original language it's told in or sung in, perfect. If it's something short and easy and it can be approached like that, fantastic. Bring it in, because there are different sounds and they can listen to other languages, and that's wonderful if you know the language. So you can bring in other languages into the English classroom. It doesn't have to be English, and you can use children's mother tongue as well. It doesn't have to be 100% English. Use their native language, because that will bring it closer to them as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. I think we've taken enough of your time. It was really early in the morning for you, so thank you so much for putting it and for teaching everyone here so much about, hopefully, stuff they can take back to their classroom as well and start enlightening those rooms with the rest of the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Will. Thanks, Macmillan. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, what's green, please, Sarah? I've got a few things I'd like to say.
Sure.
Can you say in the chat box, can you see that all right? You can see a big colourful slide that says share it. Good stuff. So Sarah mentioned, brought up the course a couple of times, share it. And I wanted to tell you a little bit more about that, because you're here watching a talk which is about interculturality in the classroom. And if you're interested in bringing other cultures in and helping your learners explore other cultures, then you might be interested in share it. So what Share It does, firstly, it really importantly, looking at the small C's that Sarah was talking about, it helps students, it helps nurture a sense of empathy where everyone is valued. And it also instills a growth mindset, enabling students to grow more. And it also focuses on the values of respect, kindness, and responsibility throughout the course. It, of course, teaches the English language, and it's got a variety of different ways in which it does that. We've got video animations. There's controlled practice with the pair share, group share, and class share. There's also a large focus on social and emotional learning as well. So if you're interested in anything that I just said, there will be a form in the chat box, a link in the chat box where you can find out more about Share It. And also in a minute, there's going to be a link where if you want to speak to someone at Macmillan Education about Share It specifically, or about any of our courses, if you like, just fill in the form and we'll get in touch really quickly to talk to you about the course. We're really proud of this new course, Share It. It really looks at the things today that teachers are facing, the struggles that you're facing, and the things that you'd like to be addressing in class. So take a look at the website. I hope you like it.